And we're recording.
Morning.
Awesome. Well, welcome everybody. And I'm partaking.
Me too.
What's in that mug there, Harold?
Well, if I told you, I'd have to kill you.
You're not in Georgia. You're just in South Carolina.
Yeah, but I drink a lot of peach tea.
Well, everybody, tonight, Harold's our speaker, and it's really privileged to have him. First off, welcome everybody to the Rotary Club of Motorcycle Rotarians. Dave is back. Everybody's back, I think, that we had before. So, again, my apologies. I don't know what I did to shut us off, but there's a first time for everything. So, tonight, Harold's our speaker. I've been looking forward to this. Little clips that I hear there and now, and Terry Moore. Terry was on before, wasn't he?
He was.
Well, hopefully he'll get back in here in a second here. I wonder if I can text him. You know, I will try and text him while when we get started here and see what's up. So anyway, I've been hearing a little bit of clips here and there. I know John gave a nice report on you, Harold, after the ride.
I paid well.
We had a few people already tell me they couldn't make it tonight. John's one of them. He sends his apologies. So anyway, without anything further ado, Harold, you want to go ahead?
Yeah. Are you going to allow me to show my pictures?
Sure. All you got to do
is
go down the bottom there and see that green button that says share screen?
Yes.
Hey, Terry's back in. He's coming back in.
Okay. Am I sharing?
Yes, I think so. Yeah, there we go.
Yep.
Oh, cool. Am I good?
We're seeing all sorts of pictures sitting there.
All right. Well, I'm going to try to make this short, sweet, and simple, and not very complicated. What I've done is I've thrown together a few pictures to help augment our discussion. And when I say discussion, I hope it is a two-way discussion. I don't want to monopolize the entire time talking about me, which for me is one of the most difficult subjects. I just don't like talking about myself. Anyway, I will give you one apology. I tried to organize these pictures chronologically so that it would flow easier, but the system simply didn't allow me to do it. And it's a system error. It's my kind of error. So let's see what we have here. All right, one of the things that you may not know is that I spent 34 years as a police officer. 7.5 of those years was spent with state police as narcotics.
Hold on, we get some noise here. There we go.
Okay. And the balance of that time, 27 years, was spent with this department, Charleston Police Department, where I retired in 2012 as a lieutenant. Now, during that time, I had a ton of different responsibilities, and I'll get into that a little bit more as we go. This is, I kept this picture because I thought it was real cool. I live here in Charleston, and it's a metropolitan area. It's certainly not in the swamp. It is in South Carolina, but it's not in the swamp. And I got a call from the animal control people, one of my units that was under my charge. And I got there, and they said, hey, we've got this 12 or 13-foot gator near a apartment complex with a bunch of kids around. We've got to remove it, and our fish and feathers guys won't come out and get it because they claim we can do it. and we know you're in the Coast Guard, so could you tie some knots around this thing to help us? Well, that's not really what my job was, but being the kind of person I am, I jumped right in. And you see the guy with the assault rifle? He has 2 magazines in there. He had strict instructions from me. If that gator got loose, he was to empty that rifle into that gator before it bit me, and I would clear the field of fire. Well, that never happened. She was kind of lethargic, and I was able to climb on her back and tie her mouth up and try to put some handcuffs on her, but it wouldn't fit. So we dealt with it. Now, these pictures are going to be out of order pretty much. So you're going to find me going back and forth. If anyone has any questions or comments or concerns, by all means, stop me. I don't want to hear myself talking all the time. This is a cattle box.
Excuse me a sec there.
Yeah.
Most of you have on mute, so you have to hit the unmute if you're going to ask him a question.
Or criticize them. All right, this is my shadow box that I got when I retired from the Coast Guard in 2011, where I did 33 years of reserve duty. I retired as a chief, as a Marine Enforcement Chief or Marine Enforcement Specialist. The significance of the shadow box, beyond the fact that it's a shadow box, one of my shipmates walked up to me and asked if he would be given the privilege to construct it for me, which was indeed a huge honor, because he's a woodworker and he used exotic woods that he had parts and pieces of that he collected over the years. So this box, beyond the medals and the flags contained within, have a lot of meaning to me. This is my wife. You know, what discussion would be complete without the hot Latina? All right, she's Mexican, and she keeps reminding me of the good and bad things, mostly the bad things that I've done, and that she's got a rusty razor blade that she'll cut me. So I have learned how to sleep with one eye open. That's very important. That's key to my survival. So sometimes you'll see me on a trip. I'll be having the time of my life because I'm really well rested. I will have gotten a night's sleep with both eyes closed. And it's really neat. Anyway, we're on a boat ride here. I was in the Chesapeake Bay boating around and trying to enjoy life a little. Now, things wouldn't be complete if I didn't talk about my sweet dog. This is a pit bull that I didn't want 12 years ago that was brought to my house by one of our kids. And, well, 12 years from then, I'm still contending with my little buddy here. She follows me everywhere. She's a great dog. She's not a vicious pit bull. You know, I wish she would bark at strangers. Instead, she just wants to sniff their butts. You know, I don't know what it is about dogs and butts and their noses, but they go hand in hand. All right, this is one of my trips up to the mountains of North Carolina. I'm situated about 4.5 hours from the Pisgah Mountains, which is western North Carolina, where we have some formidable roads. They're some of the best in the country. I would put them up against other places I've been to in the country. They're very technical, they're very fun, and they're also very lethal. This is my old RT that I got rid of in 2013 for another bike that you'll see. That's me just having fun, letting people know you don't have to ride in a certain kind of clothing to ride a motorcycle. I'm very passionate about my riding, and I have been for many years. I've been riding for over 30 plus years. And it's not uncommon to see me in a coat and tie and on my motorcycle. partly to make a statement, partly because I just love riding, and I ride everywhere I can, every chance I get. This is when I was on my Four Corners tour when I retired in 2012 from the police department. I decided I wanted to see our great country from the saddle of a motorcycle. There's a group in Southern California Motorcycle Association. They sponsor a Four Corners ride, and you can do it solo, you can do it with a group, but they have certain guidelines, such as wherever you go, they have 4 points, and this is one of them, the southernmost point of the United States. You have to document your arrival there by having a picture taken of your motorcycle in front of a local post office, or you in the picture. Of course, this is a very iconic symbol that most people recognize, so I was able to get one of the tourists passing by to take a quick shot. You can see his thumb up in the corner there. He wasn't a very good photographer. This is out in the Midwest. Again, I'm on my Four Corners tour, and what a great ride. You know, I did it solo. I guess I would do it again in a heartbeat. This time I would stop to smell the roses. I definitely would like to make more time to enjoy it. It was 26 days, 10,506 miles in 26 days. When I came back, my wife said, well, I guess you're done with that riding stuff. I said, yeah, you know, honey, you're absolutely right. Let's go get some food. So I took a shower, got my gear off the bike, pushed the bike out of the garage, and she looked at me and said, what are you doing? And I said, well, you haven't ridden with me in almost a month. I thought, since it's such a pretty day, we could ride a little. Well, she drove the car, I rode the bike. Now, this sign to me is symbolic. This is not something you see in South Carolina at our rest stops. Poisonous snakes and insects inhabit the area. Well, what do you mean inhabit the area? That's where I am. So when I stopped in Arizona, I was beset with this sign and 4 illegal aliens staring at me, trying to figure out, I guess, if all 4 of them could fit on my motorcycle, and me thinking, what can I do to dissuade them from what I think they're thinking about? Well, it worked out well. They asked for help, and I called the Border Patrol and got them all hooked up. You know, you can take the cop out of the country, but sometimes you can't take the country out of the cop. So my wife says I'm retired, but, well, formally retired, but you never get it out of your blood. This is a shot taken at one of my stops in Oregon. What a beautiful place. And for me to have the ocean and the mountains married up against one another is just my kind of place to be. I can't wait to get back there. This is Blaine, Washington. This is another one of the Four Corners stops. This is on the Canadian border, the northwest corner. And my God, the people are so incredibly nice. I think that's one of the things I found out about this trip is that we're not in as much trouble as politicians claim that we are, because there are some very good salt of the earth people out there, and a motorcycle is a great icebreaker. It's a good way to open up conversations with people. They talked about the motorcycle, they talked about people they knew who had been in the Coast Guard, they had heard about Charleston, they wanted to know about the history of Charleston. I spent many hours sharing stories and educating many along my trip. This is out in, I believe, Wyoming. I was looking for Custer's Last Stand and just saw neat places like this. I'm a big history buff and a cowboy fan, so I felt like I had died and gone to heaven. A couple of times I almost died there. Now, no trip is complete without some calamity. You know, this officer is shaking down this motorcyclist. So I just threw this in to let you see that, motorcyclists come in all shapes and sizes. And I think it was a good resolution. He didn't find any weapons on this little guy, and he was able to go on about his business. Deals Gap, many of you may have heard about it. It's Tail of the Dragon. This says The Dragon. It's formerly known as Tail of the Dragon. I took this group of these would-be characters here. They're a member of a coffee group. It's not a formal membership kind of thing or a club. We just meet on Saturday mornings at 9 a.m. at different coffee locations. And although there are no ladies here, it's guys and gals, young and old, any kind of bike, two-wheelers, three-wheelers. It's good fellowship, good exposure, but I am not a big proponent of Deals Gap. You'll see the sign says 318 curves in 11 miles. Well, I'm here to tell you, you don't have time to look at the fauna or anything there in the area. Your eyes are glued from beginning to end on where you are, where you're going, and where you hope to be. There are a number of people who die here every year because they try to exceed the envelope, the operating envelope of their motorcycles, and they end up flying off the side of the mountain, or worse than that, they don't hold their line and they cut corners, hit other riders, and cause some riders to be hospitalized. And also it's an open highway, so there are trucks and large vehicles that take it, and they cause a lot of calamity. But there's a tree here, I don't have a picture of it, it's called the Tree of Shame. It has all the parts and pieces, and yeah, I see the head shaking. Tree of Shame. I am not there, I don't want to be there, and I don't want to be a part of anybody who's there or wants to go there. It's just crazy. This was taken at a museum in Maggie Valley, North Carolina. I am here to tell you is one of the must places as a motorcycle rider to go.
Is that Wheels Through Time, Harold?
Absolutely. Bingo. Good for you. That's Wheels Through Time. This gentleman has a variety of motorcycles, new, old, mostly old, I think dating back from 1910 or 8 or something like that. And every single motorcycle runs. And I challenged him. I took him to one of the older bikes that you had to crank a pedal to get it started. And damn if he didn't get it started. He works on them himself, and it's just a great museum to go to. My wife had to drag me out of there because I was kicking and fighting. I wanted to stay there. I can go there 100 times and never be tired of it. By the way, look at this motorcycle. You see those cylinders or cylinder heads? This is not a BMW. Okay, at first glance, most people want to believe it's a BMW. It's a BMW knockoff. Towards the end of World War II, the U.S. government discovered those are some bulletproof motorcycles that had begun to be built in 1923. They're tried, tested, and proven. And the U.S. government commissioned Harley Davidson to copy that bike and better it. This is what they came up with. But the war ended, and there was a big surplus of motorcycles, and that was never revisited. This is a picture of me in 98, I believe. And why this is significant is obviously it's a police uniform. It's our dress uniform when I was promoted to lieutenant of police. This is my daughter, the little chubby girl. You're going to see another picture of her, and you'll see how the tides of time or the changes in time have evolved. This was my baby up until about 2018. I got her in 09. And one of the first things I did was I was on my way coming back from Petaluma, California, coming home, and you see the bags in the back. I had been to the Chiefs Academy, And it was a 2-week school, had a great time. And on my way back, I didn't realize where I was. I saw a sign and it said Bonneville Salt Flats. So my mind started thinking, Bonneville Salt Flats? The Bonneville Salt Flats? So I rode out there, and my God, I felt as though I had died and gone to heaven. I was actually at the Bonneville Salt Flats. I wouldn't go on the Salt Flats. I just kind of stood there, dropped to my knees, and kissed the salt. Well, there was a Canadian couple, leaving it up to the Canadians to help educate me. A Canadian couple came up to me in their Winnebago and said, hey, we're kind of standing by, waiting to see if you go out there. And I said, oh, no, I can't do that. That's hallowed ground. They said, are you kidding? We just drove several miles out there. When there's no racing going on, anybody can go out there. Duh. So I took my bike out there. I had her up to about 120, and I started thinking, if I drop the bike and damage it, I have no insurance coverage because it's not a state-supported highway. I need to stop. So I stopped and took pictures. This picture is too blurred. I'm sorry. This was in 1969. I was a Naval Sea Cadet receiving the Naval Sea Cadet of the Year Award here in Charleston. A little blurry. This is sort of an old picture too. Back in '87, I was just a corporal, police department obviously, and I was in the training division. And as the officer in the training division, one of my responsibilities was to take care of a 1947 Chevy that we paraded around, literally paraded around. I took it up to Washington, D.C. for the dedication of the National Police Memorial one year, which went over really, really big. And basically it was wax on, wax off, constantly. It was a whole new dimension of driving, shifting on the column. Cool. All right, this is in 2013 when I first got my current bike, the R1200 GS. I am absolutely, positively in love with this machine. It does everything I want it to do and then some. It doesn't have the glitz and color of Jerry's bike. My God, who can have that? But, you know, I can go places where Jerry can't go or where Jerry wouldn't think about going. I'll tell you about my trip to Newfoundland a little bit later.
You mean like in the mud, Harold?
What's that?
You mean like in the mud?
You got it. You're absolutely nail on the head.
Been there, done that.
Great. Oh, wait a minute. I'm
I don't
sorry.
know. I've seen Jerry's Honda in the mud.
Really? On purpose? Okay. Well, I'm waiting to see that.
No.
This is back in my earlier days. I was in charge of the underwater search and recovery unit. So I've been a scuba diver for about 35 years. I haven't been diving in probably 8 years, but this is back. The other guys, 3 guys with me, they're members of the dive team. We're doing just a fun dive offshore here in Charleston. People think because the water is so cloudy you can't see anything, why would you dive here? Well, you go as little as 5 miles offshore. Here we're 30 nautical miles offshore. You drop down 100 feet and the water is crystal clear. It's like you're diving in Florida. The difference is it takes you an hour and a half to drive out to that site. In Florida, it would take you about 15 minutes. This is one of my goofy pictures on the motorcycle when I was in charge of the traffic division. I was in charge of the traffic division 3 different times. And I really pushed hard to get consolidated, concise, good training for our officers. A little bit about me and my background with motorcycling, because that's what we're talking about. When I started in 1976 on Harleys for the police department as a police officer, it was not good. Basically, the sergeant just looked at me and said, "Boy, keep your mouth shut, do as I tell you to do, and I'll let you know when you're ready to go out on your own." That was the extent of our training. I followed the sergeant around for about 2 weeks, and I pulled up to the pumps to get gas, and he looked at me and he said, "What are you doing, Hill?" I said, "Well, sir, I'm waiting on you." He said, "The city doesn't pay you to stand here and watch me. City pays you to write tickets. Get out there and go to work." That was my graduation. That, he basically said, read between the lines, get out there and go work. So a buddy of mine and I did a lot of research about motorcycling techniques, the dynamics, the physics behind it. And we ended up getting a lot of trouble. We were trick riding on a Sunday morning. He had a Honda prototype we were testing, and I crashed into him because he kept slamming on the brakes in front of me, and I was standing up on the seat balancing. Probably not something we should have been doing, but anyway.
You learn a lot doing that sort of stuff.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, you do. That was a good learning lesson. But now our officers are not permitted on the street on a police motorcycle until they have successfully passed a very intensive, rigid 40-hour course. As a traffic commander, I put myself through the course just to see if I could pass it, but I'm always interested in learning and expanding my knowledge base. And the first morning, I dropped that Harley 12 times, and no one helps you pick it up, not even for the lieutenant. So I learned a lot about the proper technique to utilize picking up motorcycles of any size. If I can pick up a full-dress police bike, I feel very confident I can pick up any bike out there, any normal bike out there. I'm sure there are exceptions. This is one of the normal looks for me on the job, because as a lieutenant, I was a shell answer man. I was a go-to person. So when I left after 34 years, it was sort of bittersweet. I really didn't want to leave, but the offer was really good. And the political tides had changed such that dinosaurs like me were becoming outdated, outmoded. It just wasn't a comfortable profession to be in any longer. So I felt I had done as much as I could, and it was time to explore other avenues. Yep, back. So I told you these pictures are really out of order. That's that car I was telling you about. And this was, we were in DC, and I'm shining the car. It's what I did a whole lot of to have it representative of our department. I'm not monolithic. I'm not only about law enforcement. I'm not only about motorcycles. I'm not only about diving. I have a very wide variety of interests. I volunteer, although lately I haven't done it very much. I volunteer with the Veterans on Deck program we have here in Charleston. It's a program we have about 5 sailboats, and we take veterans with PTSD and missing limbs, things of that nature. And they're really stressed out very badly, emotionally and physically. So we take them on sailboat cruises in the harbor, 2-hour cruises, and we get away from the dock, get them out in the harbor, and we turn the tiller over to them, give them some of the feel, the excitement, the gratification. And for that 2-hour period, they can talk about anything, where we're not judgmental, we don't pick at anybody, yell at anybody, we just get out there and sail. And so this is one of those pictures. Another one of the pictures, you can see a little bit of the Charleston, not the harbor, that's looking back from the harbor in towards several of our marinas. Beautiful place. If you've not been to Charleston, it's another bucket list place. This picture is from the Barber Motorsports. Has anyone been there?
I don't think so.
Huh?
No, where's it at?
All right, it's in Birmingham, right outside of Birmingham, Alabama. This is another one of those places, I promise you, you will not regret going here. They have over 1,400 motorcycles on display in that building right behind me. I went to a BMW RA rally and spent a weekend there. And another one of the places where they had to pry me away, we got a special tour, and I almost cried because they wanted me to leave. They asked me to leave. They have a motorsport speedway there where I was allowed to take my bike and get it out on a racetrack and just run it wide open. What a great weekend.
Hey,
Now,
when was that you did that?
oh, I did that about 2015.
Yeah, they used to let you do that on Bristol Motor Speedway as well, but
Really?
yeah, about 2 or 3 years ago, their insurance agency stopped them from doing that.
Yeah, I started to say insurance agents have a bad way of putting a damper, or the insurance companies. It's something called risk and liability.
Yeah.
This is a cool place I found. I love lobster. So I thought, when I'm in Maine, do as the Mainlanders do. And Red's Eats is one of the popular stopping places there. I was on my tour around to the Four Corners. I had left Madawaska, Maine, and I was headed south, heading back to my homeland. And I saw this place. I'd heard about it. And let me tell you, I enjoyed that lobster roll. Good eats. Now, when I was in Newfoundland, I took a trip about 2-3 years ago to Newfoundland, and I was gone for about 3 weeks, jumped on a ferry at Sydney, Nova Scotia, and we landed in Newfoundland, went to the tip-top northwest corner where the Vikings landed. So this good old Southern boy, for the first time, got to see real icebergs. I knew what an iceberg was and how it looked, but I'd never seen one up close and personal. And when we got into the harbor there, the little town, the temperature, I kid you not, dropped about 20 degrees just by virtue of the icebergs that were there. But because of the bike I was riding, we were able to get we were able to get to the water's edge, and we shoved one of the young guys into the water because we were smart enough. We weren't going to brave the cold water. And he pulled a piece of broken chip of iceberg over. We chipped it up and got to drink 10 to 25,000-year-old water. Maybe it's psychological, but it sure tasted good. Where we spent the night, there was no drinking of alcoholic consumption of any kind during the trip unless we were bedding down for the night. So this place where we were staying that night in Newfoundland, they served iceberg beer. And I'm not a beer connoisseur, but I thought it was damn good. And I have something else there that I don't have a picture of. It's called Screech. Has anyone heard of Screech?
No.
Yeah, I bet you, Bruce. Yep, good man.
Sure have.
And it's awesome. Love it. Jamaican rum process with iceberg water. How can life be any better? You know, I've always said, if I leave here, it will be Canada. So you guys look out. That's my stomping grounds. This is a shot taken in Canada. I was trying to make my way back to the States, back to Maine. And we actually got caught in a storm. And there were 10 of us. 5 of them stayed with me. 5 of them went on because they're buttheads. They're just stupid. They wanted to try to outrun the hurricane. You know, I was thinking about the skill level of several people involved, and we decided to stay. We pulled over, get our game plan together, and this is pretty much what it looked like. It was rough. It was a hurricane. No, it was a tropical storm that had hit Charleston that had made its way all the way up the coast and hit Nova Scotia. And, of course, we ran right into it. This is just before you can see the international banner. This is just before getting back into the States. And I had to stop and write type a quick message before I left Canada. Another shot from Canada and my baby. I love that bike. This is my daughter. This is the little girl, the chubby little girl you saw the picture of back in '98. She has budded out really well. And right now she's in Liberia, of all places. You know, most people go to Europe for a vacation. She and her boyfriend they are not on a vacation, but it's a humanitarian effort teaching hundreds. I think yesterday they taught over 200 little kids boxing skills and life learning skills. She's a nurse. So there's a little side story about that too. This is my son and the 2 grandkids. And those are the only 2 kids I have. That's me, of course, pigging out. All right, this is what I remind my wife of all the time. You know, whenever there's a problem and all I really hear is blah, 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 the problem is easily solvable. I get on the bike, adios, see you later. The insurance is paid, I'm good. And it works for me because all I have to say is I'm going on a motorcycle trip or I'm going to play golf, and she's okay with that. That's me all suited up and ready. This is in front of our house. Ready to, huh? Oh, that's a train.
Yeah, that's mine.
Are you trying to tell me?
That's coming out of my mic. I live pretty close to a track.
Okay.
All right.
That's my wife. See, the previous picture, I'm going on a trip, going, leaving. That's her car. Now she's in her car, and she's a very happy person because I'm going on yet another trip. She's a pistol. How could you be great? Look at these 2 sweet people. That's back when we got married 29 years ago, okay? Just youngsters. Boy, if I had only known then what I know now. No. That's my daughter, her little nurse's outfit when she graduated. So proud of her. Now, this picture is demonstrative of really what I'm all about. Motorcycling isn't simply something you get into, you get on, and you do it every now and then. Motorcycling is a calling. You know, you have to constantly work at it to refine it, to be better at it. And the way you get to be better at it is practice doesn't make perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect play. So you have to get out and you use opportunities. This is a flooded street in front of my house, which is not uncommon when it rains very heavily. But this was a great opportunity. My neighbors thought I was crazy. But I was using this as a training ride. There's a little ditch there that I would go down and submerge the bike as long as I could keep it right below the snorkels. So the water has gotten up to about my knee and I can still move. And I need to test and see what the limits are of that envelope before I need to use it. So that's the reason behind that.
Hey, I got 2 comments on that one.
Okay.
Number 1, there's easier ways to wash a bike. Number 2, looking at that, I can see how you and John Cram get along now.
Hey, you got to do it. So this is me getting ready on one of the trips. When I was in California, I adopted the philosophy to wear a reflective vest. Splitting lanes was new to me and maybe a little uncomfortable, but I stopped and bought this vest, and I always try to wear it when I'm on a long trip. I don't wear it often, but on a long trip. This is when I graduated from the FBI Academy. Law enforcement executives go to the National Academy, and I graduated in 1989. So again, this is, this is real. This is these are my parents. They're both deceased. My dad died at the age of 96. My mother died at the age of 98. So this man hated the fact that I became a police officer because I'm an only son. I have a sister, but I'm an only son. He thought surely with my mouth, I would be killed by somebody in the department or certainly somebody out, and especially playing with motorcycles. He told me as long as I lived under his roof, I would never, he said, boy, you'll never ride a motorcycle as long as you live under my roof. So when I left, went to college, I quit college and became a cop and learned how to ride a motorcycle. I figured I could kill 2 birds with 1 stone, become a cop and a motorcycle rider. He's a good guy. That's an old picture. Now, this picture is significant. The reason I had to throw this in was for, well, our Canadians. This is where I learned how to sail, where my nautical expertise was developed, or the foundation. This is on the Bay of Fundy. I went through training as a sea cadet.
Harold, Harold,
Yes, sir.
you didn't tell him who that other guy was in the last picture.
No, I sure didn't. That was Reuben Greenberg. He was our first black chief of police, our first chief of police, black police chief in Charleston, I think in 82 or 83, and he was also Jewish. So I accused him of having Sammy Davis Jr. Killed so he could be the only black Jew. Needless to say, he didn't appreciate my comments very much. He was a very colorful person, to say the least. And when I have a couple hours, I have a couple hours worth of stories about that. Thank you, Mike. And this is, you saw the military shadow box. So from the police department, this is my shadow box displaying the different badges, the different levels that I went through. And believe it or not, the most important aspect of this is right in the center, my trident with the hard hat helmet depicting being a law enforcement diver, of which I spent 12 years of. I should have died several times doing that. This is from 1976 when I was 21, a brand new patrol officer, and had so much to learn, yet so little time. But I made up the difference. It's just a collage of pictures when I retired from the Coast Guard in 2011. If you look down at the bottom, you can see the palmetto trees, not the palm trees. We do not have palm trees in South Carolina. We have palmetto trees, hence the nickname of the state of South Carolina, the Palmetto State. Okay, that's another story. This is when I received my chief's hat. This gentleman that I'm saluting is a World War II veteran. He's a senior chief. This senior chief is one of the most coveted people to have present you with a hat. I had an admiral ask me after the ceremony, how on earth did I get Senior Chief Gelwicks to present me with my chief's hat? Because that was unheard of that he would do that for anyone. But he and I go back. I used to be a crewman on his boat many, many years prior to this, and he felt that it would be an honor to present me with that hat. Just a picture, the Ingham, the ING is from the Ingham. It's of Vietnam era Coast Guard cutter. And the Master Chief who's in charge of us. And of course, I'm trying to give the Master Chief some instructions that he's not taking very well. So he reminded me that he's the Master Chief and I'm only the Chief. And that's it. I can get out of this.
So,
Harold,
Yes.
Harold, it's Terry.
Hey, Terry.
How are
How do I
you?
get out of this?
Wonderful presentation.
Oh, don't lie to me, Terry.
You omitted one story that you must tell.
Well, I'm looking at the time, and so I was kind of rushing it. There are many, many stories. Now, which one are you alluding to?
Our last snowstorm.
Oh, I don't know why, but I couldn't find those pictures. Thank you, Terry.
Oh, bullshit. You didn't look for them.
I did. I tried to include it. That street that you guys saw that was flooded out, our most recent snowstorm, which is an anomaly for us here in Charleston, everything was covered in snow. So I thought, hey, this is a great opportunity, a learning opportunity to learn how to ride in snow. So I took my bike out and I got some video recording of me going up and down the street in some snow. Again, people thought, look at this crazy black man on that motorcycle. Has lost his mind. They thought I was crazy, but there was method to my madness. Perfect practice makes perfect play. I want to live and see another day, and only if I can ride. So my passion is unequivocal and unparalleled with riding.
So you then drove up Highway 61, right?
Okay, so I dropped the bike. All right.
How many times?
Twice.
And you were able to get it started how?
It was on
With-
ice. I had a little old lady. I had a little lady walk up behind me as I laid on the ice on my back under the bike. Son, can I help you? No, ma'am. There were two other gentlemen who helped me, and I got up, but I gave it a little bit too much gas, and we all know what happens when you do that. That rear wheel goes zing, and I went boom, crashed again. But there was no damage to the bike. My pride was damaged, but I lived to ride another day, and that's what it's all about. Thanks a lot, Terry.
You got it, brother. You got it.
So in case you guys hadn't noticed, I was hopeful of not boring you to tears because I am rarely ever without a story. On my plaque that they gave me when I retired from the Coast Guard, there's a little inscription there, and it says, "Let me tell you a story." One of these days, I'll pull myself up on my bootstraps and sit down and chronicle these things and write a book. I don't know if it'll be fictional or real. I prefer fiction because I can use different names for different people, and I wouldn't want to necessarily hurt anyone's feelings. So, any questions? I'll be happy to entertain, besides Terry.
Hey, when do you plan on redoing your Four Corners trip?
Anytime. And this time, I really, truly plan to enjoy it. What happened on the first trip, I had a blowout at 80 miles an hour going down 95. And the blowout didn't bother me so much. You know, I had a little wobbling effect, pulled off to the side of the road. The sun was beating down on me, and I was prepared. Almost. I purposely didn't pack my air compressor. That was the first mistake. I had a couple of CO2 canisters, and I found a hole, plugged it, and instead of reassessing, I was obstinate about I had plugged the one and only hole. And I used up all of my compressed air on that one and only hole when in fact I had two holes. It looked like a little snake bite. So the long story short was I had to be towed 85 miles away. I was towed on a wrecker. I was humiliated. I was furious. I spent the night at a naval air station, went on to Key West from there. And after I started, I was on the clock. I had 21 days to finish it by the rules of that club in Southern California. So I was so overcome with the heat. I had overpacked. I really hadn't prepared well for it. I called my wife and I said a few expletives and I said, I'm coming home. So I rode home and unpacked, and I was horrified. My daughter and wife had a beautiful, like a birthday cake made for me. And it basically said, it had an inscription, basically, we're so proud of you, you know, meeting this challenge. They were supposed to present it to me when I finished the Four Corners. So I recalculated everything and I told them I could still make the trip with 2 days to spare if I stayed on the interstate. And that's what I did. I went west to San Ysidro, and then I flew up to Madawaska. I went over to Michigan, went through Port Huron, cut through Canada, and came out Edmonton, I think, which Edmonton or Edmonton. It leads right into Madawaska, Maine, which was the fourth location. And I made it with 2 days to spare. So I met my objective, but if I had that opportunity to do it again, I would like to stop at places like Tombstone, Arizona, and see where the gunfights went on, where the cowboys roam, where the tumbleweed blew. Really stop and enjoy some good mom and pop places. Stop by and see Crater Lake in Oregon. I didn't have enough time. I really shortchanged myself on that trip. But Alaska is on my bucket list. I really want to go to Alaska very badly. I've looked at a number of different routes. I pride myself in being able to carve out routes by using Google Earth, Google Maps. I zoom in and look at the contour of the different roads so I can look and see what kind of riding I want to do. Do I want twisties? I didn't share with you guys that about 15 years ago, I flew into Munich. We rented motorcycles. There were 5 of us. And we went into Austria and then through the Dolomites, northern Italy, came up through Switzerland and back to Germany. Spent 6 days on the ground there, and it was fabulous. But my favorite place is still Canada. Everything is so clean. The food is great. The people are so hospitable and gracious. It's a wonderful, wonderful place through which to tour. Next to my love, which is Utah. It's just something about the moonscape of Utah, the challenges of off-road riding. I'm kind of stuck in that.
Harold, if you really want to go to Alaska, today's the 19th. If you run up to Michigan by the end of the month, I know a couple guys that are going up there.
I do too.
That's why I'm spending so much time on my bike right now, getting it ready.
Get used to it.
Yeah, and I got to finish cleaning it before I take it up to the convention here Friday.
Oh, I thought you started to say for the trip. Yeah.
No, actually, I just put on Elite 4 tires, so I'm anxious to ride those. Ooh, I just got a cramped leg too. Ow. And so I'm anxious to ride those. I need to put a couple 100 miles on it before I get her up there, but getting it all ready and getting it all polished up. I'll share with you guys, last week I was texted something about, I had it tore apart, and Carlton Purnell evidently saw my post on Facebook, and he wrote on there, he says, WTH, what the hell, They're going to let a Honda on the IFMR booth? So I wrote back to him right away. I said, yeah, right. I says, you wouldn't think they'd let me upgrade the booth so much that way or something like that. He just,
I saw that.
Suzanne said he cracked right up. I told you this guy's in an email. My apologies.
Good to hear it again. It's a good story, so you might as well tell it twice.
But you know what? That bike's going to be the most photographed motorcycle in all of IFMR come the end of next week.
Nothing to do with it being the only bike, right?
Well, being bright yellow, I will get all the babes to sit on it.
When I come to the booth, can I sit on it?
There you go.
Harley guy sit on it?
Don't let him sit on it. Let his wife sit on it, but don't let him sit on it.
But yeah,
We had,
Your seat.
right about 6 years ago, Dave, I can't think of Dave's last name all of a sudden. He passed away on one of our rides, actually.
On one of the rides?
Well, on the way to the ride, they had an accident. It was Carlton's friend.
Yeah.
Anyway, but he's a diehard Harley rider, and he had to sit on it just to sit on it. So I got his picture, and he was all proud of that until I published it on the internet for him. So, anyway, well, tell you what, Harold, the hour is getting to its end. Really enjoyed listening to you. If you push a little bit, you can twist this arm a little bit to go with you on that four corners.
Oh, yeah? Okay.
Like maybe next year or something.
Sure.
So I would love to ride with you. I'd be glad to ride with you. And I think there's a lot of people here all thinking the same sort of thing right now, right? A lot of thumbs up there.
Thumbs up.
I'd love it.
Great. And you can do it any way you want. You can crisscross it and go to the four corners, or you can literally go around.